Think you know everything about Discovery Channel's Storm Chasers? This adrenaline-fueled reality series hid some truly bizarre secrets behind the cameras. From a vehicle that literally couldn't retract its ground anchors and had to be dug out by hand, to a star who used McDonald's cheeseburgers as good luck charms on his dashboard, the real stories are stranger than any tornado. Buckle up for the wildest facts about this extreme weather show that will blow you away. Fact 1. TIV-2's stakes got permanently stuck in ground. When Sean Casey designed the second version of his Tornado Intercept vehicle in 2007, he thought he had solved all the problems that plagued the original TIV. The TIV-2 was supposed to be bigger, better, and more stable than its predecessor, featuring an advanced anchoring system that would keep the massive armored truck firmly planted on the ground during tornado intercepts. What Casey didn't anticipate was that his engineering would work almost too well. The TIV-2's anchoring system consisted of two hydraulic stakes that could extend 42 inches down into the ground, designed to prevent the 16,000-pound vehicle from being lifted or moved by tornado force winds. These weren't just simple spikes, they were sophisticated hydraulic mechanisms that were supposed to deploy when needed and retract when the intercept was finished, allowing the crew to drive away quickly and safely. During the vehicle's first real test deployment, the hydraulic stakes performed exactly as designed, biting deep into the earth and holding the TIV-2 completely motionless against powerful winds. The problem came when Casey and his crew tried to leave after the storm passed. No matter what they tried, the hydraulic system refused to retract the stakes from the ground. The anchors had worked so effectively, gripping the earth with such force, that the hydraulic motors couldn't generate enough power to pull them back out. What followed was an embarrassing and labor-intensive solution that nobody had planned for. Casey and his entire crew had to grab shovels and manually dig around each stake, loosening the packed earth by hand until they could finally free the TIV-2 from its own anchoring system. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A vehicle designed to intercept nature's most powerful storms had been defeated by plain old dirt and its own engineering success. Fact 2. Tim Samaras' McDonald's cheeseburger good luck ritual. Tim Samaras was one of the most respected and scientifically minded storm chasers featured on the Discovery Channel series, leading the TwistX research team with precision and dedication. Despite his serious approach to tornado research and his reputation as a careful, methodical scientist, Samaras had one quirky superstition that surprised everyone who knew about it. He routinely placed a McDonald's cheeseburger on his vehicle's dashboard before heading out on storm chases. This unusual good luck ritual became such a well-known part of Samaras' routine that fellow storm chasers and colleagues in the meteorological community came to associate the fast food item with the legendary researcher. The cheeseburger wasn't something he ate during chases or saved for later. It was purely ceremonial, sitting on the dashboard like a strange talisman, while Samaras and his team pursued some of nature's most dangerous storms across the Great Plains. The ritual was so deeply connected to Samaras' identity as a storm chaser that when he tragically died in the El Reno tornado in 2013, the storm-chasing community honored his memory in a touching way. At the annual ChaserCon convention in 2014, meteorologist Mike Nelson placed a McDonald's cheeseburger on the edge of the podium during his keynote address as a tribute to his fallen friend. The gesture was so meaningful that Tim Marshall, another close friend and colleague, brought over 400 foam cheeseburgers to distribute among the attendees at the convention. These foam cheeseburgers quickly became treasured mementos within the storm-chasing community, with many chasers photographing them on their own dashboards as they continued Samaras' work. The simple McDonald's cheeseburger had transformed from one man's personal superstition into a symbol of remembrance and respect for a scientist who had dedicated his life to understanding tornadoes and keeping people safe from these powerful storms. Fact 3. Reed Timmer's Dominator got window blown out mid-tornado. Reed Timmer's Dominator 1 was supposed to be the ultimate storm-chasing vehicle, a heavily armored Chevrolet Tahoe modified with bulletproof sheet metal and thick Lexan windows designed to protect its occupants from flying debris and tornado-force winds. The vehicle had been specifically engineered to get closer to tornadoes than any regular car could safely manage. But during a chase in Aurora, Nebraska in 2009, the Dominator's protective systems failed in the worst possible moment. Timmer and his passenger were positioned dangerously close to a tornado that was unexpectedly strengthening right over their location when disaster struck. The driver's side exterior Lexan window, which was supposed to be one of the vehicle's key protective features, failed to roll up properly when they needed it most. As the tornado's winds intensified around them, the unprotected opening became a critical vulnerability that the storm immediately exploited. The powerful winds rushing through the gap blew out the driver's side window completely, sending glass fragments flying throughout the interior of the Dominator, while Timmer and his passenger were still trapped inside the strengthening tornado. Both men suffered lacerations to their faces from the flying glass, turning what should have been a controlled scientific observation into a terrifying fight for survival. The very vehicle that was supposed to keep them safe from tornado debris had become the source of their injuries. This incident highlighted the dangerous reality behind storm chasing, even with specially designed vehicles and experienced crews. Following this near disaster, Timmer and his team made significant upgrades to the Dominator 1 during the 2009 off-season, strengthening the bulletproof sheet metal and improving the Lexan window systems to prevent similar failures. The Aurora incident served as a stark reminder that even the most advanced storm-chasing technology could fail when faced with the unpredictable power of a tornado. Fact 4. The show's biggest tornado miss was an EF5. During the early days of Storm Chasers in 2007, the teams were eager to capture footage of a major tornado for the Discovery Channel series. But their most spectacular failure came when they completely missed one of the most devastating tornadoes in recent history. The Storm Chasers crews were positioned in Kansas on May 4, 2007, tracking severe weather activity when they had to make a critical decision about which direction to pursue the developing storms. Dr. Josh Werman, the respected atmospheric scientist who led the Doppler on Wheels team and served as the meteorological authority for the group, made the call to head farther east rather than staying with the western storm system. This decision seemed reasonable at the time based on the atmospheric data they were analyzing, but it would prove to be catastrophically wrong from both a scientific and television production standpoint. While the Storm Chasers teams drove east chasing what they hoped would be significant tornado activity, the storm system they had abandoned was producing something extraordinary near Greensburg, Kansas. An EF5 tornado, the most powerful rating on the enhanced Fujita scale, was carving a path of unprecedented destruction through the small town. This massive tornado destroyed 95% of Greensburg, leveling nearly every structure in the community and marking it as one of the most complete tornado devastations ever recorded. When the Storm Chasers teams finally learned what had happened, they realized they had missed what meteorologists would later call the tornado of the year, and potentially one of the most significant tornado events they could have documented. The Greensburg tornado was the first EF5-rated tornado in 8 years, making their absence from this historic event particularly painful for both the scientific mission and the television production. This miss became a defining moment that highlighted how unpredictable and humbling storm chasing could be, even for experienced professionals with advanced equipment. Fact 5. TIV-2 broke down so much it needed a backup. When Sean Casey and his team unveiled the TIV-2 in 2008, it was supposed to represent a major upgrade over the original Tornado Intercept vehicle, addressing all the limitations that had held back the first version. The new vehicle was built on a Dodge Ram 3500 chassis with four-wheel drive, better ground clearance, and more sophisticated equipment. But what should have been Casey's crowning achievement turned into an embarrassing mechanical nightmare that nearly derailed the entire Storm Chasers production. The TIV-2's problems began almost immediately during its debut season when the vehicle suffered a broken axle on one of its first chase days. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience. The axle failure was caused by the vehicle's excessive weight of 16,500 pounds, being supported by what turned out to be inadequate axle components that weren't designed to handle such a massive load. The repair process revealed that the TIV2 had fundamental engineering problems that went far beyond a simple part failure. As the 2008 storm season progressed, the TIV2 continued to experience a cascade of mechanical failures, including brake problems, hydraulic system malfunctions, and additional axle issues that kept sending it back to the repair shop. The situation became so problematic that Casey was forced to abandon his prized new vehicle and return to using the original TIV as his primary chase vehicle, essentially making the older, supposedly inferior truck his main star again. Discovery Channel's cameras captured this embarrassing reality, showing Casey and his crew dealing with the constant breakdowns and repairs that plagued the TIV2 throughout most of its first season. The vehicle spent so much time in various repair shops that it missed numerous significant storm-chasing opportunities, forcing the production team to rely heavily on the backup TIV1 to keep the show moving forward and maintain their filming schedule. Fact 6. A cast member's death was hidden for months. Matt Hughes was a popular meteorologist and storm chaser who appeared on Storm Chasers as part of Sean Casey's TIV team, working first in the support vehicle called the Doghouse, and later as the navigator inside the TIV itself. Hughes had struggled with depression for years, though this wasn't widely known among fans of the show or even many of his closest colleagues in the storm-chasing community. On May 14, 2010, Hughes attempted suicide at his home in Kansas, and after spending nearly 2 weeks in intensive care, he died on May 26 at the age of 30. The timing of Hughes' death created an unusual and emotionally complicated situation for Discovery Channel and the Storm Chasers production team. The show's episodes were filmed during storm season in the spring and early summer, but they weren't broadcast until months later in the fall television schedule. This meant that Hughes had already completed filming for what would become his final appearances on the show, including footage that captured some of his most successful moments as a storm chaser. Discovery Channel made the decision not to announce Hughes' death immediately, instead waiting until his final episode was ready to air in November 2010. The episode, which was titled Dedication, featured Hughes successfully guiding the TIV team to intercept a tornado, showing him at his most professional and accomplished. Viewers had no idea while watching the episode that Hughes had already been dead for nearly 6 months. The revelation came as a complete shock to fans, when the episode ended with a simple dedication message explaining that Hughes had died earlier that year from complications related to a fatal injury at his home. Many viewers were stunned to learn that they had just watched a dead man's final professional triumph, making the episode both a celebration of his skills and an unexpected memorial to a cast member whose personal struggles had remained hidden from the public eye. Fact 7. Joel Taylor died on a gay cruise ship. Joel Taylor served as the driver for Reed Timmer's Dominator vehicle throughout much of Storm Chaser's run, becoming a fan favorite for his down-to-earth personality and skilled driving during high-intensity tornado chases. Taylor was 38 years old when he died unexpectedly in January 2018, but the circumstances surrounding his death were far removed from the dangerous world of storm chasing that had made him famous. Taylor was aboard Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas during an Atlantis Events all-gay cruise that had departed from Fort Lauderdale, Florida on January 20, 2018. The cruise was scheduled to make stops at St. Martin, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Royal Caribbean's private island of Labadee before returning to Florida. According to passengers and crew members, the cruise atmosphere had become quite party-focused, with multiple controlled substances reportedly circulating throughout the ship's entertainment areas. On the evening of January 22nd, witnesses reported seeing Taylor partying on the ship's dance floor where he consumed what appeared to be a large quantity of GHB, a controlled substance sometimes used recreationally. Taylor reportedly lost consciousness on the dance floor and had to be carried back to his cabin by other passengers. When the ship docked in San Juan, Puerto Rico the following morning, crew members discovered Taylor unresponsive in his room. The toxicology results released months later by the Bureau of Forensic Sciences of Puerto Rico confirmed that Taylor had died from MDMA poisoning, commonly known as ecstasy overdose, with traces of ketamine also found in his system. Several passengers had been arrested for drug possession before the crews even departed from Fort Lauderdale, indicating that controlled substances were already a known issue on the voyage. The FBI launched an investigation into how the drugs got onto the ship and who was supplying them to passengers during the cruise. Fact 8. Mythbusters used Boeing 747 engines to test storm vehicles. In 2010, Discovery Channel produced a special crossover episode that brought together two of their most popular shows, when Mythbusters hosts Adam Savage and Jamie Hyneman teamed up with Storm Chasers stars Sean Casey and Reed Timmer to test whether their tornado-chasing vehicles could really withstand extreme wind conditions. The collaboration was designed to answer a question that had been on viewers' minds since Storm Chasers premiered: were these heavily armored vehicles actually capable of surviving the tornado-force winds they claimed to handle? To create winds powerful enough to simulate an EF5 tornado, the Mythbusters team took the TIV-2 and Reed Timmer's Dominator to an airfield in Michigan, where they positioned both vehicles directly behind the jet engines of a Boeing 747 cargo airplane. The plan was to gradually increase the engine power until the exhaust created wind speeds of 250 miles per hour, equivalent to the strongest tornado winds ever recorded. During the first test at 160 miles per hour, both storm-chasing vehicles performed well with no significant damage, while a control car had its hood torn off and was pushed back 50 feet. However, when they cranked up the jet engines to full power for the 250-mile-per-hour test, an embarrassing mistake was revealed. The TIV-2's driver door suddenly blew wide open during the high wind test, which initially looked like a serious structural failure of the vehicle's design. The real cause turned out to be much more mundane and embarrassing. Sean Casey had simply forgotten to lock the door before the test began. Despite this human error, both vehicles earned what Adam and Jamie called the Mythbusters-approved 250-mile-per-hour rating, with bright pink emblems stenciled onto each vehicle to commemorate their successful performance under extreme conditions that would have destroyed ordinary cars. Fact 9. Tim Samaras used turtle probes filled with water. Tim Samaras was renowned throughout the meteorological community for his innovative turtle probes, specially designed instruments that could be deployed directly in the path of oncoming tornadoes to collect crucial scientific data from inside the storm. These cone-shaped devices, officially called Hardened In Situ Tornado Pressure Recorders, or HITPRs, were engineered to withstand tornado-force winds and measure atmospheric pressure, temperature, humidity, wind speed, and direction at 10 samples per second, storing all the information on non-volatile flash memory cards. The turtle probes had made Samaras famous in the scientific world when one of his devices recorded the steepest drop in barometric pressure ever measured during a tornado encounter in Manchester, South Dakota. This groundbreaking data had catapulted Samaras to international recognition and helped secure funding from National Geographic and other organizations for his TwistX research project, making the turtle probes the cornerstone of his scientific reputation and career. On May 31, 2013, Samaras and his team were pursuing the massive El Reno tornado in Oklahoma, when their vehicle was caught by the storm's unexpected rapid expansion and change of direction. The tornado killed Samaras, his 24-year-old son Paul, and research partner Carl Jung, in what became the first known instance of professional meteorologists being killed by a tornado while conducting research. When recovery teams later located the TwistX vehicle and equipment, they discovered that the turtle probes Samaras had been carrying were completely filled with water, rendering all their electronic components useless and destroying any potential scientific data that might have been collected during the team's final chase. The water damage meant that the instruments which had made Samaras's career and contributed so much valuable information to tornado science over the years, yielded no useful information from the very storm that claimed his life, adding a tragic irony to an already devastating loss for the meteorological community. Fact 10. Reed Timmer's vehicle was called Pizza Delivery Car. The TwistX research team, led by Tim Samaras, was known for using a fleet of modified Chevrolet Cobalts as their primary chase vehicles, a choice that often drew jokes and criticism from other storm chasers who favored heavier, more robust trucks and SUVs for tornado research. Tony Laubach, a TwistX team member who had extensive experience driving one of these Cobalts, once compared the four-cylinder, two-wheel drive sedan to a pizza delivery car, highlighting how inadequate it seemed for the extreme conditions of storm chasing. The Chevrolet Cobalt's limitations were well documented among the storm chasing community. The lightweight sedan struggled on rough rural roads, had difficulty handling high winds, and lacked the ground clearance needed for off-road pursuit of tornadoes across the Great Plains. Despite these known weaknesses, TwistX continued using the Cobalts primarily for economic reasons, as the research project operated on a tight budget and needed fuel-efficient vehicles that could cover long distances during extended chase seasons. The irony of this vehicle choice became tragically apparent on May 31, 2013, when Tim Samaras made the fateful decision to use a Chevrolet Cobalt for what would become his final tornado chase near El Reno, Oklahoma. Samaras, his son Paul, and colleague Carl Young had left their heavier research truck, nicknamed the Kahuna, back in Kansas, and were traveling in the Cobalt with 3 turtle probes loaded in the trunk, making the vehicle even more weighed down than usual. Looking back, some of Samaras's colleagues expressed surprise that he had chosen the Cobalt for such a potentially dangerous deployment mission. The vehicle that team members had mockingly compared to a pizza delivery car was weighed down with 3 grown men and heavy scientific equipment, facing one of the most powerful and unpredictable tornadoes ever recorded. The choice highlighted how budget constraints and practical considerations in storm chasing could sometimes override safety concerns, even for the most experienced researchers. Fact 11. The show featured 7 cast member deaths. Storm Chasers developed a tragically high mortality rate among its cast members that was unusual even for a show focused on dangerous weather phenomena. Between 2010 and 2018, 7 people who had appeared on the Discovery Channel series died from various causes, creating a somber legacy that overshadowed the show's scientific and entertainment achievements. The deaths began in 2010 with meteorologist Matt Hughes, who worked as part of Sean Casey's TIV team and died by suicide at age 30 after struggling with depression. 2 years later, in 2012, Andy Gabrielson was killed in a traffic accident. The most shocking losses came in 2013, when 3 TwistX team members were killed by the El Reno tornado. Tim Samaras, the respected team leader and engineer, his 24-year-old son Paul Samaras, who served as the team's photographer, and Carl Young, a former Hollywood crew member turned atmospheric science student. The tragic pattern continued in 2016, when Herb Stein, who had served as the driver for the Doppler on Wheels radar truck, died at age 57 after a battle with pancreatic and liver cancer. The most recent death occurred in 2018, when Joel Taylor, the popular driver of Reed Timmer's Dominator vehicle, died of a drug overdose while on a cruise ship at age 38. This mortality rate was extraordinarily high for any television production, particularly considering that Storm Chasers only ran for 5 seasons from 2007 to 2012. The variety of causes – suicide, traffic accident, tornado, cancer, and overdose – showed that while storm chasing itself was dangerous, the risks faced by cast members extended far beyond their professional pursuit of severe weather. The deaths affected the entire storm chasing community and served as a reminder of the personal struggles and dangers that existed both on and off camera. Fact 12. Sean Casey spent $81,000 on TIV-1 after dismantling Mom's Appliances. Sean Casey's path to becoming the creator of the famous Tornado Intercept vehicle began with what many parents would consider destructive behavior, systematically taking apart his mother's household appliances as a curious child. Casey later told the Weather Channel that he had caught the engineering bug early in life by dismantling blenders, toasters, television sets, and essentially any electronic device he could get his hands on, then attempting to reassemble them to understand how they worked. This childhood fascination with mechanical systems and engineering principles eventually evolved into a lifelong passion for building and creating complex devices. Though Casey never pursued formal engineering education at a university level, instead, he developed his skills through hands-on experimentation and practical experience, learning to solve problems through trial and error rather than textbook theory. When Casey decided to pursue his dream of filming inside a tornado for an IMAX movie, his self-taught engineering background became the foundation for an ambitious and expensive project. He purchased a 1997 Ford 450 Super Duty truck in December 2002 and began an 8-month transformation process that would turn the ordinary pickup into an armored tornado-chasing machine. The construction of TIV-1 required Casey to design and fabricate custom armor plating, install bulletproof polycarbonate windows, create a hydraulic claw system for anchoring the vehicle, and build specialized camera mounts for IMAX filming equipment. The total cost of materials, modifications, and labor reached approximately $81,000, representing a massive financial investment for an independent filmmaker pursuing what many considered an impossible goal. The project demonstrated how Casey's childhood habit of taking apart his mother's appliances had evolved into the technical skills needed to build one of the most specialized vehicles ever created for storm research. Documentary filmmaking. Fact 13. The show was canceled because it focused too much on drama. When Discovery Channel announced the cancellation of Storm Chasers in January 2012 after 5 seasons, the decision came as a disappointment to many fans who had followed the various teams through their tornado hunting adventures. However, at least one prominent cast member was actually relieved to see the show end, and his reasons revealed fundamental problems with how the series had evolved over its run. Tim Samaras, the respected engineer and scientist who led the Twistex research team, reportedly felt that Storm Chasers had strayed far from its original mission of documenting legitimate tornado research and had become too focused on manufactured interpersonal conflicts between the different chasing teams. Samaras had joined the show in 2009 with the genuine intention of advancing tornado science and improving public safety through better understanding of these dangerous storms. As the series progressed, Samaras became increasingly frustrated with the production's emphasis on creating dramatic tension between personalities like Sean Casey and Reed Timmer, rather than highlighting the important scientific work being conducted in the field. The show's producers seemed more interested in capturing arguments, rivalries, and ego clashes between the chasers than in explaining the meteorological research that was supposedly the show's primary purpose. When Storm Chasers was officially canceled, Samaras expressed relief that he would no longer have to participate in a television production that he felt had prioritized entertainment drama over scientific education. His reaction highlighted a common tension in reality television, where the demands of creating compelling viewing often conflict with the authentic work that participants are actually trying to accomplish. For Samaras, who was genuinely committed to advancing tornado research and saving lives through better storm prediction, the show's focus on personal conflicts had become a distraction from his real mission of understanding these powerful natural phenomena. Fact 14. Reed Timmer's Hurricane Ian vehicle got washed away. By 2022, Reed Timmer had moved on from his famous armored Dominator vehicles to a much more modest storm-chasing setup, a beat-up 2018 Subaru Forester that he nicknamed Dominator 4. This vehicle was far from the high-tech tornado interceptors he had used during his Storm Chasers days, instead representing what Timmer called an economical approach to extreme weather documentation that relied more on mobility and fuel efficiency than heavy armor plating. The Subaru had already taken a tremendous beating from years of storm chasing, accumulating countless dents from hailstones and requiring frequent repairs to windows and lights damaged by severe weather encounters. Timur had literally held the vehicle together using flex tape and other emergency repair materials, giving it a distinctly makeshift appearance that was a far cry from his previous custom-built storm-chasing machines. In September 2022, Timur took the Dominator 4 to Pine Island, Florida, to document Hurricane Ian, as the Category 4 storm made landfall with devastating storm surge and winds reaching 160 miles per hour. Timur positioned himself to capture footage of the hurricane's most intense conditions, but the storm surge proved more powerful than he had anticipated for his lightweight vehicle. During the height of Hurricane Ian's impact on Pine Island, the storm surge literally washed away the Dominator 4, leaving Timur stranded on the island without transportation. The vehicle that had survived countless tornado chases and hailstorms across the Great Plains was no match for the massive wall of water that Hurricane Ian pushed ashore. Timur found himself trapped on Pine Island after the bridge connecting it to mainland Florida became impassable, forcing him to wait for rescue while his trusty Subaru was somewhere out in the floodwaters, adding an unexpected and dramatic end to the career of his most humble storm-chasing vehicle. Fact 15. TIV-1 became a scavenger hunt prize. After the original Tornado Intercept vehicle had outlived its usefulness for Sean Casey's storm-chasing and filmmaking projects, the famous armored truck that had made television history sat abandoned on a central Kansas farm for several years, slowly deteriorating under the prairie sun and weather. Casey had moved on to other projects and no longer needed the vehicle that had cost him $81,000 to build and had become the star of the early Storm Chasers episodes. Rather than scrapping the vehicle or trying to sell it through conventional means, Casey came up with an unusual solution in 2020 that turned the disposal of TIV-1 into an internet phenomenon. He announced that he was turning the abandoned vehicle into a prize for what was essentially a real-world scavenger hunt, where the first person to locate and claim the TIV would become its new owner, free of charge. The challenge attracted storm chasers and treasure hunters from across the country who began searching for the elusive vehicle using various methods and clues. However, it was Wichita-based storm chaser Robert Clayton who ultimately solved the puzzle using modern technology rather than traditional searching methods. Clayton spent considerable time studying satellite imagery on Google Earth, methodically examining Kansas farmland until he spotted what appeared to be the distinctive shape of the TIV-1 sitting in a rural field. When Clayton arrived at the location he had identified through satellite imagery, he discovered that his Google Earth detective work had paid off. There was the original Tornado Intercept vehicle, weathered and neglected, but still recognizable as the famous storm-chasing machine that had appeared on television. Clayton officially claimed ownership of the vehicle and began making plans to restore it, giving the TIV-1 a second chance at life after its years of abandonment, and turning Casey's creative disposal method into a successful treasure hunt that captured the imagination of the storm-chasing community.